Hello, listeners. It's Gunter here with some exciting news. We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspired Change with Gunter. If your organisation cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self development, and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspired Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked number 1 in Australia and number 5 in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts to listen and follow in 2024. With an average of 50,000 downloads per episode each week from listeners all around the world, our reach is significant and growing. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda Spiegner Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer at miranda@noirtainment.com. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome back to Inspired Change, the podcast where I dive deep into what it truly means to live a healthy, balanced and fulfilling life as men in today's world. And hopefully give you the tools and strategies and skills and ways of thinking to enhance your life, to create a much, much more purposeful and fulfilling existence. What for some of us, unfortunately, may mean a rather short existence, mainly due to things like ill health and so on. So I'm your host, Gunter, and today, as promised, I'm exploring a topic crucial for all of us. And you might have picked up that it's something that I consider to be very, very important, and that is well-being. Lots of people on the bandwagon these days about longevity. And that's all very well, but let's face it, living long without being healthy may not be a lot of fun. So if we are going to live long, how about we do it in a healthy way, in a fulfilling way? So specifically, I want to look at how men can find and maintain a healthy balance between work, life, relationships. And here's a topic that I want to include, which isn't often included in talks like that, and that is sexual health. I'll explain as we go on why that might be an important factor. So, these areas that we're talking about are deeply interconnected. When one falls out of balance, then the others often follow. The stakes are high, but so are the rewards. So let's get into it. Let's define well-being for men. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot these days, but I think it's important to understand that well-being is more than simply the absence of illness. It's about thriving physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially. For a lot of men, this concept often comes with some unique challenges, social expectations, the pressure to succeed, the pressure to earn, and the whole cultural set of norms around masculinity that sometimes push us towards unhealthy extremes. So that might be overworking, it could be neglecting relationships, and or it could be ignoring our mental health. True well-being, in my view, is about balance, but it's a balance that isn't rigid. Okay, so let me introduce you to a very subtle but important concept. I don't know if any of you out there have tried stand-up paddleboarding. Okay, now those of you who have surfed and tried stand-up paddleboarding more than likely did it in the waves. And one of the things that I very, very quickly picked up in stand-up paddleboarding in my first weekend of humiliating falls into the water all the time was that in order to keep my balance on the board with all the ripples and little waves and cross currents and so on, I needed to drop my weight into my lower body and keep my feet flexible so that they could move, they could adjust, and my knees subtle. Okay. So the lesson of the day here is that true balance occurs through subtle micro movements in adjusting our weight and adjusting our balance constantly. It's the thing that makes stand-up paddleboarding such a great workout because in doing so, you fundamentally have got all your muscles engaged, especially your core stays on constantly. Whereas if I'm on a sort of prone surfboard or on a longboard, you know, I'm probably only using my muscles 40% of the time, if that. Okay, so as I said, the message is subtle adjustments. So, balance is about integrating different aspects into our lives. It means adapting to work, our relationships, our personal growth. And here's the thing in my experience of over 40 years of working, especially with men, but also women, sexual health or the lack of it is often the barometer about how good we are in keeping ourselves well. Now, some of you might want to disagree with that, but I challenge you to come up with some good reasons why this might not be the case. It's affected by our physical health, by our mental health, by social health. The whole kit is enrolled in this, and as I said, it's a barometer. It's not about the be all and end all of everything, but it's there as a little beacon. There are many other beacons, for example, how you sleep. But what it is like Freud said, libido is about our life force. And if you think about our life force as like a light on a dimmer switch, for some of us, it's barely visible. Yet for others, that light is shining through the darkest night. So when these elements are in effect in harmony, we're not just surviving, we're thriving. But here's the catch. Balance isn't something you achieve once and then you forget about it. Like standing on a stand-up paddleboard, it's a dynamic process. It requires constant attention and adjustment. Yes, after a while, it requires less attention, but it always requires adjustment. So I want to break this down now into some of the main components. And I'm going to start because for most of us as men, and it does work these days with women as well, but let me talk to the men. The one area that frequently dominates our lives is work. So the work-life balance is often in tension. We're in a dilemma here. Given that's a central part of our identity, especially for men, it's where we often derive a sense of purpose, achievement, and status. But here's the thing: when work consumes too much of our time and energy, it doesn't just impact us, it affects everyone around us, particularly our relationships and our health. The concept of work life balance has become a bit of a cliche, I know that, but it's still incredibly important. And let's be honest, achieving it can feel like chasing a moving target. The key here is not to aim for the perfect 50-50 split, but to find a rhythm that allows you to meet your responsibilities without sacrificing your well-being. Now, first, we need to recognize the signs of imbalance. Are you constantly exhausted? Do you feel like you're always on call, even during supposed downtimes? Is your work creeping into your personal space and time, leaving little room for hobbies, relaxation, or connections with loved ones? So, let's go my partner, my kids, my friends, other acquaintances, maybe some volunteer work. Right? So there's a lot to it. All of these are a red flag. And as I said, one of the main red flags is the lack of energy that often can translate into sexual energy. We know that stress impacts on our libido. But if I take Freud's view on libido, which is that it is a life force and it's not just about sex, then that makes a lot more sense in many respects, to me at least. So, next, it's about setting boundaries and making deliberate, intentional choices. Now, this might mean learning to say no, might mean learning to delegate, but it also might involve reevaluating your career goals if they're constantly clashing with your personal values. In amidst it all, it also means carving out time for yourself. You need time to recharge, you need time to reflect, and you need time to reconnect with what truly matters to you and the people in it. Remember, being on all the time is not a badge of honour. It fundamentally is a path to burning out, and I see lots of people burning out. A balanced approach to work not only improves productivity, but it also enhances your overall well-being and your work satisfaction and your morale. And ironically, often means that you have fewer days off, at least sick. Because if you're keeping it in balance, your immune system is going to be pumping a bit better. All right, let me go on to the next area. And this is important. As you've probably picked up from many of my podcasts, the whole thing about connection and healthy relationships is key. Relationships are fundamental to our well-being. Yet, they're often the first to suffer when we're out of balance. Now, that could be with your partner, friends, family, it could be with acquaintances. But these connections provide the emotional support and intimacy that are essential for a fulfilling life. Now, here's a caveat. Some of you may be in an unhealthy relationship. You might be satisfied at work, but unhappy in your personal relationship, your intimate relationship. You need to reflect on this. You need to see what it is that you need to change. Is it possible to work this through with your partner? And if it isn't, it would be possibly in your best interest to reconsider being there. Now, this is the challenge that relationships actually require work. Like if I'm going to say no and set boundaries, firstly, I need to reflect on what it is that I'm going to set boundaries to. For men, this can be a lot of times really, really tricky. We're often taught to be stoic, to solve problems on our own, and certainly to show or avoid showing vulnerability. We're supposed to show strength, not vulnerability. But here's the truth. Real connection comes from being open, honest, and willing to engage in the sometimes uncomfortable conversations that deepen intimacy. And in those rare moments, it may also terminate that intimacy, that intimate relationship. You know, coming back to the romantic relationships and on a positive note, that means that I need to prioritize quality time, to practice active listening, to be emotionally present and well paced. It's about showing up, but not just physically. I'm talking about emotionally. And, presence is all important. If your work or other commitments are consistently taking you away from this, it's time to reassess. A healthy relationships build on communication, trust, and mutual respect, and they require regular maintenance. When it comes to friendships, the same principles apply. Don't let your friendships fade because of a hectic schedule. Men often find themselves so isolated as they get older that they have literally nobody around, mainly because they themselves have not nurtured their relationships. These bonds are just as important as romantic ones because they provide different kinds of support and they also help us to maintain perspective. So, let me bring this issue in about sexual health and well-being. Sexual health is a critical component of overall being because it reflects our energetic state. It's often the very place where our stress comes through. I've spent enough time with women who, in the early days of parenthood, just don't get the opportunity to bring that part of themselves into play. But they often have a partner who is insensitive or, not communicating well with them and try all sorts of things to coerce them into that sexual relationship. That when they, in fact, that what they really need is some understanding and possibly a few very, very important breaks. So for us as men, it's more than just the sexual approach to it. It's also about, we need to understand the relationship between affection, about sensuality, and about our own sense of desires, needs, and also about boundaries. We need to be respectful of ourselves, but as much as that of our partner. We need to respect our partner in this. So we come back to that need for really open communication with your partner about your sexual relationships, your needs, but it's a two-way street. We need to be interested in the other person. We need to be open to opening that door. So this includes discussing not just what you want, but also what you feel comfortable with and any concerns or issues that may arise. All of us come with certain beliefs, taboos into our intimate relationships. These play out without ever being really discussed. Now, for a lot of us as men, one of the things that gets in the way is this issue about performance and performance anxiety. The idea of differing levels of desire or the impact of stress or fatigue. A lot of us as men actually aren't very clear about how all that fits together. And so what some men do is they just give up on it altogether. So I see men in their, 50s and 60s who haven't had a satisfying sexual relationship with their partner for a long time, but they've also not addressed the issue with their partner. They've simply given up. And to me, that's a very sad state of affairs. And what often that doesn't need to be there. So, another point I want to make around this is that sexual health isn't just about what happens in the bedroom. It's about understanding the broader context: work, stress, emotional disconnection, unresolved conflicts in your relationship that affect your affection towards one another, this level of sensuality, and the level of sexual intimacy. Taking care of your physical health through exercise, diet, and regular medical checkups also plays a vital role in maintaining sexual health. So, for example, men with low testosterone, exercising regularly, having the right diet lifts your level of testosterone. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get sexually aggressive. What it means is you just feel better and therefore are more open to experience that sexual energy, that dynamic. Now, finally, in that context here, one of the things I want to say is that it's really important to confront and let go of unhealthy myths around masculinity and sex. The idea that men must always be ready, always perform, or that sex is purely physical and a sort of an Olympic event basically leads to really unrealistic expectations and, most importantly, a great deal of dissatisfaction. The healthy approach is to recognize that sex is an expression of intimacy and connection, of love, of care, of nurture, not just a physical act. So what I want to do now is, having covered some of the sort of basics, is talk about a few strategies for achieving and maintaining well-being. And some of this is generic almost. It's a thing that, I've spoken a lot about in different podcasts, but I'm going to run through it fairly quickly. Number one, prioritize self-care. It's essential. Set boundaries. Learn to say no, whether that's at work or at home or in your friendship circle or in your club. So the reason why I bring that out is really important is because in order to say no, you need to know why you're saying no and then be able to hold ground with that. And in order to do that, you need to be able to communicate openly. Don't let misunderstandings fester. People make all sorts of assumptions when you're going to say no, and you draw up a boundary. Clarify why you're doing it. Next one, invest in your relationships. These are fundamentally important. Number 5 is an inner experience of reflection and adjustment. Regularly take stock of your life. What's working, what's not. Be willing to adjust your approach as your circumstances change. The one common denominator in this is that all of us age, and in doing so, we move through different developmental stages that have different needs. Our purpose, our meaning of things, the intention that we bring to stuff, all of that is important to examine. So flexibility is the key here to maintaining balance. Educate yourself, whether it's about emotional expression, emotional intelligence, leadership, communication, sex. Understand what you're dealing with. We make this assumption, we come into this complex life, this dynamic world, and as we go from childhood to adulthood to old age, we're somehow meant to know all of this automatically, intuitively as we go along. That's the biggest load of rubbish that I've ever really heard and been exposed to. And I speak from experience, having been on the planet for over 60 years is that what I knew then about myself is different to what I know now about myself, because I'm not static. I'm a different person with different experiences, different understandings. My brain's different. Now, lastly, but not least importantly, seek professional support if you need it. If you're struggling with any aspect of well-being, whether it's work stress, relationship issues, sexual health concerns, aging, relationships that are possibly toxic but you don't know, don't hesitate to seek help from a therapist, a counsellor, or another mental health professional. There is absolutely no shame in getting the support you need to thrive. And all of us have a right to thrive, despite of politics or corporate leadership, which often actually has very little interest in your own individual thriving. So, to wrap it, well-being is not a destination. It's a continuous journey. It's about making conscious choices, balancing our responsibilities, rest and joy. So as men, we need to challenge the myths that tell us we must sacrifice one part of our lives for another. By striving for balance and nurturing all aspects of our well-being, work, relationship, and health, sexual and otherwise, we can lead richer, more satisfying lives. So let me thank you for joining me today on Inspired Change with Gunter. Let's keep working towards a life that's not just successful, but truly fulfilling, mind, body, and soul. So until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep inspiring change. This is me signing off. Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com. For inquiries regarding broadcast topics or appearing on the show, email Miranda at noirtainment.com. That's Miranda at NOIRTAINment.com.